You steal my spleen. Fine, I steal everything you own. By Geminycain. Chapter 11. Mortals. Aim to finish what you started. Tim spoke calmly, like someone in the eye of a hurricane. Another click from Jason's gun made Tim force his eyes together and his teeth to clench.
Something like that.
The stagnant voice responds. Tim gathered threads of information to evaluate the situation. Even with his back turned, he could make a picture, just a second, as he fought against the rising panic in his mind. Jason's voice sounded static. He was wearing his helmet. The footstep he heard before was heavy, even for Jason, and Bruce had told him that Jason had left with all his gear. He was wearing full body armor. Tim himself was still wearing his work suit with a loosened tie. At least he had the dignity to attack me in my uniform last time. The gun had a safety, so it was not one of his antiques, and from the way it sounded, Tim would guess it was Jason's Desert Eagle. That is not good. The repeated flashes tried to force memories from the first time Jason did this. It felt like his head was screaming. PTSD, his brain mocked him. Shut up. He pushed it aside. He could call Khan. Tim's words would not be faster than a bullet. He could have Tati bite Jason's arm off. Tati was not faster than a bullet. Right now, Tati covered his head, but if Jason shot anywhere lower than his skull, Tim would be hit. The kitchen knife had been slipped out of arm's reach from him, but Tim was always armed. In his left pocket was a throwing knife. Every design of every batsuit ever made flashed through his eyes like images on a prompter. He saw every advantage and every weak spot they contained. Jason's was the thin rim between neck armor and helmet. Next to him was his coffee mug. It was one of his old ones and did not have much weight to it, so it would not do much damage. On the other hand, the pot of coffee was still brewing. Jason did not think of Tim as confrontational, so he would expect him to yell or duck to the side. He would not expect to have a pot of scalding hot coffee thrown at his head before a knife was inserted into his carotid artery. Honestly, he had avoided bullets before. After training with the League, he knew more of Jason's fighting style. Tim was not a child this time. It would be easy. It would kill him. He is pointing a gun at me. I should not be worried if it kills him. But you are. No, yes, why? If you die, it will have been a worthless death. Unfair, abso-fucking-lutely, but worthless. If he dies, Bruce will return to how he was before. The willowing grief returns and drowns everyone and everything before it ends up killing someone. And the things you had set out to fix as a child will have been for nothing. If you kill him, your life will have been worthless. You would have changed nothing. Tim laughed, small enough for Jason not to hear. To what? I let him kill me? The reasoning part of Tim's brain went quiet, abandoned even by his own mind. He laughed bitterly at the irony, so melancholy. So many realizations in less than a second. When the tears began to prickle in his eyes, Tim lifted his head and took a breath and adjusted himself. If you're going to kill me, could you do me a favor? Make sure my friends do not discover the aftermath this time. I do not want them to experience that again. Tim sniffed and adjusted his shoulders. They do not deserve that. Although Tim could not see Jason or his body language, he pictured Jason readjusting himself and his grip based on the twisting sound of his leather jacket and gloves. You know, Tim took a shaky breath and closed his eyes as he let the memory slip in. The first time we had this little dance, and you stood there with your gun pointed at me as I lay on the floor, I remember so many things going through my head. A laugh in his throat came involuntarily. The dread of letting Bruce down, the fear of dying so young. The corners of Tim's mouth went up, but he was not smiling. And what took the most space in my head the moment you took your helmet off and told me who you were was guilt. His eyes became half-lidded. What a stupid child I had been to believe I was honoring you. A breath that sounded like a laugh escaped his throat. It was not a laugh. Replacement, replacement, replacement. It is almost a word too kind for what I did to you, right? God, what a selfish kid I was for involving myself, for wearing those colors, and for thinking I was doing something good for once. Those were the thoughts going through my mind as you slit my throat, and I felt the blood running down and forming a pool around me. I deserve this, on repeat. What a guilty, stupid, selfish child. He huffed a laugh. A child. That's funny. The silence was uncanny, as if there were no longer someone behind him, but Tim could feel him there, like a roaming presence. Every glance you sent my way after the incident was livid, threatening. Can you believe I had the audacity to survive? He asked with a choked laugh. And I must say, your threatening stares worked because I was terrified of you. But I deserve that, right? Of course I did. Always looking over my shoulder, checking every lock on my door until I feel like I'm going insane. For a second, I thought about finishing the Tim stopped himself. He took a breath, breathed in, breathed out, leaving room for a pause of silence. Did I deserve it, Jason? He asked, not bothering to hide the tremors in his voice. The only response he received was silence. Did I deserve it, Jason? The change was instant as the glass of Tim's mug shattered against the wall, and his voice hollered through the room. The air strained in the hollow silence that followed. Tim's knuckles turned white as his grip tightened on the edges of the kitchen table. What broke the silence was a click from the gun, a creak from the movement of his leather jacket, and sounds he recognized as Red Hood taking off his helmet. I'm sorry. What? Tim did not move to look at Jason. He did not answer. He did not say anything. I'm sorry, Tim, Jason repeated. His jaw tightened as his brow creased, and he shut his eyes closed. I was fucking mad at you after the dinner. Mad at how your words were aimed so perfectly to infuriate me. How you were so on fucking point to call out my shit. I was mad at how they were true. His leather-gloved hand tightened. Fucking all of them were true. I didn't know shit about you or how you became Robin. Still don't. I just don't want to admit I almost killed a kid. The next words were an admission, more to himself than to Tim. I was no better than him, he spoke somberly. The muted pause between the two was extended as a chance for Tim to say something. He did not. Never in his life had he imagined getting an apology for what happened. The words were sincere, Tim knew, and that somehow made it harder to listen to, rather than if it was just a load of bullshit. Tim knew how to deal with false apologies. The ones made by Damien when Dick or Bruce forced him to say he was sorry. He did not so much know how to deal with real ones. There were no words for him to say, so he stayed quiet. Jason exhaled understandingly. You did not deserve any of it. He answered the question finally. I ain't telling you all this because I expect you to forgive me. I'm telling you because I want you to know everything I've done is my fault alone, and I ain't gonna try anything again. The clicking sound of Jason putting his helmet back on appeared behind him.
You don't have to check your locks anymore. Not because of me.
The returned static voice sounded. On his way out, Tim counted the steps as they became smaller until they could not be heard anymore, even after they disappeared completely. Tim stood at the kitchen table, not moving, with his hands still holding onto the edge of the cold marble. If he let go, he was pretty sure he would fall. All the adrenaline and previous fear flowed out of him, leaving his head unfamiliarly empty. Someone in the family had told him they were sorry. The family would rather bite off their arm than acknowledge and apologize for anything Tim had been through, and said someone to say sorry was Jason. and he had done it by breaking in and pointing a gun at him. What the fuck? We do not take orders from the likes of you. The man dressed in dark clothes spewed at her. The steel headwear he wore covered the lower half of his face, and the space between his eyes that held a flame of superiority. I may not have the rights to be an heir, but I am my father's blood. I have more claim than any of you. The dark-haired woman spoke twice as viciously. And do I have to remind you that we have been let nowhere? None of you are any closer to figuring out who did this. Our priority is having our master return to us. He will know how to restore everything to its rightful glory, as well as who stole it. The man, as well as the men who surrounded him, looked up as he spoke, almost as if he was talking about a god instead of a man. His demeaning gaze returned to her again. You can either follow or stay aside. His eyes boring into her. She returned the stare effortlessly. Well, then, I will take my leave. Talia's eyes were vicious, and her words were deadly. She turned her sharp heel and separated from her father's frantic generals. It was like a scene ripped from a dramatic movie. To the side of them, hidden as one of many nameless assassins in her incognito mode, stood one of the people whose deeds they were arguing about. Prue stood and swore internally. Tight. Not good. This is not good.